Hello, I'm Cinemod470, and Andor is the best Star Wars show ever made. The writing is great, the characters are three-dimensional and thought-provoking, and the storylines not only portray the slow growth of the rebellion, but gives us an analysis of the true nature of the Empire's evil. For this video, I'll be giving an overview of the show's writing style and quality, while also analysing and critiquing key characters and plotlines. So there will be spoilers. If you haven't seen Andor, this is your opportunity to leave. And to avoid any confusion, when I'm saying Andor, I'm referring to the series. When I'm referring to the character, it's either Cassian or his full name. And if you like what I do, subscribe if you haven't. If we can get to 1,000 subscribers, I can start getting paid for my videos. Set 5 years before A New Hope, Cassian Andor is looking for his long-lost sister. During the search, he is accosted by two corpo cops, and Cassian kills one of them by accident, and the other to leave no witnesses. And it starts the chain of events that lead him to meeting the rebel spy master, Luthen Rael, and joining the rebellion. While Cassian is completing missions as a covert agent, we learn the inner workings of the Empire and the full scope of its evil. We witness the slow descent of the Senate, and learn how the rebels found out about the Death Star.
You have a different path, Cass, and I am not judging you. Everything you've been through, everything that was taken away from you before you even started, take all the money you found and go and find some peace.
I won't have peace. I'll be worried about you all the time.
That's just love.
Andor's writing gives the spectators an understanding of the characters and their relationships to each other by what they say and how they say it, rather than it being explained directly to us. Like when Syril Karn is reporting Cassian's double homicide to Chief Hine.
This is quite the report. This happened when?
Last night, sir. I knew you were leaving this morning, and I wanted to make sure you had all the available information before your departure.
You've been very busy.
2 men are dead, sir. Employees. That's not worth staying up for, then I'm not worthy of the uniform.
Have you modified your uniform?
Perhaps slightly. Pockets piping and some light tailoring.
I know one of these men. Kravas.
It's another reason I wanted to make sure this got the most immediate attention.
He was a squad commander on 4.
It's obviously fallen a great deal since then. He was a sentry corporal here on 1.
No mystery there. He's lucky he wasn't killed years ago. One of the most unpleasant people I've ever met. There's no suspect at this point.
We have some excellent leads.
A human with dark features asking about a Canary girl who might have been working in the establishment. Are there no witnesses to the actual crime? It's usually quite busy there.
Apparently not. This happened just outside the district at the plaza entrance to the causeway.
Yes,
There's
I know.
an intersection.
I said I know it. Were they robbed?
No, sir.
Tough case. Bad timing.
I'm sure that in several days, with the proper resources, I can bring this case to a...
Stop! And I don't mean just the talking, I mean stop.
Syril displays a rigid sense of justice and decorum, while Hine portrays indifference to the situation because he wants to avoid causing trouble with the Empire. Another example is when Cassian is asking Brasso for an alibi.
Came by for you last night.
Yeah, I know. What'd you do when you left?
Tired. I went home, cleaned up a bit, and then I fell asleep.
No. You came by for me, but I wasn't there. So then you started home and you saw me at the hotel bridge. We decided we were thirsty and you wanted to go to Cabos, but I said that was no good because there's too many people there I owe money.
You serious?
Yeah.
Who's gonna be asking?
So Cabos was out, but then you remembered you still had half a bottle of Nog stashed at home. So we went there and drank ourselves to sleep. Please, I really need this.
You insulted my choice of beverage. As host and provider, I was offended by this. You failed to gauge the depth of my irritation. You rose to make your point more vocally. I was helping you back into your chair when you fell. You were gone when I woke up. You've come in now to apologize. I accept your apology.
We know they are old friends without either of them saying, "Hello, my old friend. Gosh, I haven't seen you in at least 12 hours. Just a regular conversation between friends, and for Brasso to agree to the alibi by verbalizing his part of the story. And finally, when Vel and Cinta meet at the inn.
Where did you go?
Where was the big one?
I've no idea. Where were you? I was about to come and look in. Cold now. What?
There's a room to rent around the corner. We have a sign up.
Can't just stay here.
I can.
Alone?
2 of us would draw too much attention.
We'll just stay here and wait. Just hope he shows up. Could be anywhere.
This is all we have right now. What's the alternative?
Haven't we been apart long enough?
It's not about us.
After what we've been through.
You think the Empire stops to catch its breath? This is a fight to the death, Vel.
We figure out they're in a relationship, though it isn't a happy one, since Vel clearly wants to invest more time to them, especially after losing so many people on their last mission, which I'll get into later. But Cinta wants to focus on the mission because she knows the fight against the Empire is going to be a long one. Andor also has some of the best monologues ever written. They are naturally woven into the dialogue, so the spectators can understand what the characters are feeling in that moment, or what they stand for without it disrupting the flow of the scene.
Wherever you are, right now, get up. Stop the work. Get out of your cells. Take charge and start climbing. They don't have enough guards, and they know it. If we wait until they figure that out, it'll be too late. We will never have a better chance than this. And I would rather die trying to take them down than giving them what they want.
I'm not going to say remember this because I don't have to. This is on you now. This is like skin. You're taking her with you wherever you go for the rest of your useless life. Don't you look away from me.
I'm sorry.
She was a warrior. She was everything that you have daydreamed about. She was a blooded, fearless warrior whose loss will be mourned in ways that you will never understand. She was a miracle. And you, to die like this because of you. Some whining, simpering, foolish child. Don't you dare cry. You'll make up for this forever.
I've given up all chance at inner peace. I made my mind a sunless space. I share my dreams with ghosts. I wake up every day to an equation I wrote 15 years ago from which there's only one conclusion. I'm damned for what I do. My anger, my ego, my unwillingness to yield, my eagerness to fight, they set me on a path from which there's no escape. I yearn to be a savior against injustice without contemplating the cost, and by the time I look down, there's no longer any ground beneath my feet. What is my sacrifice? I'm condemned to use the tools of my enemy to defeat them. I burn my decency for someone else's future. I burn my life to make a sunrise that I know I'll never see. Now, the ego that started this fight will never have a mirror or an audience or the light of gratitude. So what do I sacrifice? Everything!
Also, a small detail I love is that Luthen's team always uses code when speaking over the radio, not only showing the deep layers of his cover, but also the Empire's reach as they're likely monitoring radio transmissions.
What is it?
I'm not sure.
It's Imperial.
Have you seen it before?
Maybe once when I was little. My father will know.
Andor takes its time with its plotlines by grouping them together into multiple episodes. It allows for the build-up of tension for when the corporate security is investigating Cassian in Season 1 because he killed 2 of their members. and when the Empire is slowly closing in on Bix and her friends in Season 2 because they're living on the planet illegally. We also take the time to know the side characters, their motivations, and what they represent while building up to the arc's climax. Whether it's a heist, a prison break, or a protest. Plus, it cuts deeper when a side character we like or find interesting gets killed off. However, the slow burn isn't always appealing, especially at the beginning of both seasons, with Cassian's childhood flashbacks in Season 1 and the disorganized rebel cell in Season 2. Cassian's flashbacks basically provide context for his home planet Kenari, who his sister was, and how he was adopted. But because the people from Kenari all speak an alien language without any subtitles, the spectators have to look for visual clues to get any kind of context. Now, as these flashback scenes are happening, Andor has been pretty good at using the mise-en-scene to tell their story, especially Cassian's current home planet Ferrix. The massive scrapyards show that Ferrix works mainly in disassembling broken down spaceships. The giant tower with the guy hammering the anvil acts as the Ferrix version of a bell tower, and the citizens hitting the metal rhythmically is a kind of community-wide emergency system that only the locals will understand. But all we get from Kenari is that the village Cassian lived in was filled with young people with primitive technology, and that the planet suffered some kind of mining disaster. And because we don't know what these characters are saying, and young Cassian's actor isn't the best at emoting, not much else can be deduced from the planet or its community. Not only does this lack of understanding turn away the common viewer, but the mystery of what happened to Cassian's sister never gets resolved.
Stop searching for your sister. It's a fantasy. There were no survivors on Kenari. What happened there was not your responsibility. You were a child. Let it go.
The lead writer and showrunner Tony Gilroy stated in a recent Deadline interview that he didn't know how to resolve the plotline and thought he would pick it up later. But over time, Gilroy realized that this absence in Cassian's life is what motivates him to save people, like his adopted mother Marva, his girlfriend Bix, and his old colleague Clea. And this absence stays with him until he dies, never knowing what happened to his sister. The thing is, we don't really get to know Cassian's sister due to the language barrier and her not having much screen time, so we can't really empathize with Cassian's grief, which is really annoying since Cassian looking for her is what started the inciting incident that caused the entire series to occur. If there were flashbacks throughout the series, with subtitles, and they were juxtaposed with key moments where her absence affects his decisions, the spectators could fully understand her impact on Cassian's life, even though she's not in it. The start of Season 2 has a similar problem. Cassian steals an experimental TIE fighter, only for his rendezvous point to be overrun by a volatile and disorganized rebel cell. Their main purpose is to keep Cassian hostage away from his friends while the Empire closes in on them. Now, the scenes do build up tension as this leaderless gang is steadily breaking in half because their leaders seemingly abandoned them, they're low on food, and they've been stranded for 2 days. But after Cassian escapes, we never hear from or see this cell again. Did they get eaten by the wildlife? Did they starve to death? Or did Cassian come back for them? And the planet they're stranded on is Yavin, which later acts as the home base for both Cassian and the rebellion. But the cell doesn't come up again. At least we got one last shot of Cassian's sister at the final episode. One way this plotline could have worked is if Cassian managed to use his wit to slowly become the new leader of the disorganized cell, so that way it links up with how he's acted before in Nakia 5, which I'll get into later, and lays the foundation to the leader we see in Rogue One. In fact, we do kind of get the feeling that could have happened in some of the earlier exchanges before the situation went too far. But the reason I want to bring up these two plotlines is because for the rest of the series, Andor has been pretty consistent about handling the slow burn by having each character and plotline matter and build off each other. So when the two weakest plotlines both happen at the start of both seasons and the spectators feel they don't warrant that much attention, it hurts Andor's viewership. which is a real shame since the show's best scenes, characters, and plotlines appear after these two mediocre ones, and these three plotlines in particular show off Andor's strengths.
I know the outside. I know what people tell me when I ask. The rest I imagine. I imagine your hate. I imagine that no matter what you tell me or tell yourself, you'll ultimately die fighting these bastards. So what I'm asking is this. Wouldn't you rather give it all at once to something real than carve off useless pieces till there's nothing left?
Cassian's first mission is to help steal the quarterly payroll for an Imperial sector from the planet Aldhani, one of the more primitive planets in the galaxy, but the Empire has used it as a station to store its wealth, causing the locals to be relocated to faraway villages. While Cassian's prepping for the mission, we get to know all the members of the crew. Vel, Luthen's agent and novice leader, Cinta, Vel's right-hand woman and partner who keeps Vel on track, Taramyn, a former stormtrooper, Gorn, an Imperial lieutenant who fell in love with one of the Aldhani locals, Nemik, the young, hopeful, true believer in the rebellion, and Skeen, who is pretending to be a believer just to get the money from the heist. As Cassian spends time with them, they have a subtle effect on his development, but I'll get more into that later. In order to steal the money and escape, the team have timed it with a celestial event called the Eye of Aldhani, where once every 3 years the planet moves through a crystal belt, so the heist has to happen at this time or they'll lose their opportunity to escape. And because we get to spend time prepping for the heist, learning the plan, and getting to know the other characters, there's a real tension when things don't go as planned, and a real tragedy when the characters start dying. And because most of the team dies, the tone is set for the rest of the series. Because in Revolution, people die, whether in a firefight, on the operating table, or they get shot for being a traitor. But what really makes the Aldhani Heist stand out is how it's affected the galaxy. Though Cassian views it as a robbery, common citizens like his mother realize that the Empire isn't as powerful as they want the populace to believe, and they want to start fighting. But the Empire starts cracking down hard on the citizens to ensure they stay in control.
Any criminal act with even indirect effect on the Empire will henceforth be branded a Class 1 offense.
After the heist, Cassian is sent to the Narkina 5 prison. It is based on the panopticon concept developed in the 18th century by English philosopher Jeremy Bentham. A panopticon is a circular or cylindrical prison design, ensuring perfect observation of all the inmates without them knowing they're being watched, while having a minimal number of guards present. And the prison arc integrates this concept and its criticisms into the narrative. The Narkina 5 prison is used as a labor camp, and the electrified floor conditions the prisoners to stay afraid and working. The prisoners are grouped together in different workforces, so if a single person gets in trouble, the group gets punished. And those workforces are overseen by one unit manager, and the same rule applies to the entire unit. To motivate the prisoners to work, the group that does the least gets shocked, and the group that does the most gets more flavor in their food. While Cassian is there, he works with the other inmates to come up with a plan to escape, but needs information from the unit manager Kino Loy to fill in the missing pieces and convince the entire shift unit to join them. However, due to the prison's design to appear omniscient, and Kino only having a few shifts left until he's released, he doesn't want to make any trouble. Later, a rumor starts spreading that all the inmates from one of the prison levels had been killed. But the shocking twist is that one of the inmates who had served his sentence was actually transferred to a different level, revealing that the inmates are never going to be released, but instead transferred to different prisons. This discovery motivates Kino to join Cassian, and the inmates fight back and escape, since their lives are forfeit no matter what. And due to the prison's design being dependent on the electrified floor, after it gets disabled, the inmates take over almost immediately, though not without casualties, because they outnumber the guards. However, since the prison is in the middle of the ocean, the only way to escape is to swim, and Kino can't.
Let's go! Swim. What? What did he say? Can't swim!
This moment made him one of the top characters in the series, and one of the best in all of Star Wars. Because he started out as just a regular guy who wanted to keep his head down and finish his sentence. And though he probably knew he would never escape, Kino put his heart and soul into helping everyone else get out.
Chances are, if you've heard that sound before, you've been to the Great Valleys of Ghorman. But it's a sure thing, no matter where you are in the galaxy, you've had your eye on something made of Ghorman twill. Elegance and durability, available in all weights and weaves, the Ghorman Mark of Excellence is known everywhere as the standard of luxury and quality.
The Ghorman arc takes up a majority of Season 2's screen time, and utilizes the season's time skips to showcase the Empire's long-term planning and the subtle changes to the planet and its citizens. Ghorman is an export planet whose sole source of income is the fine silks that the native spiders produce, but the Empire discover a large vein of calcite within the planet, which Director Krennic needs to finish the Death Star, but mining it would destabilize the planet. So, Krennic puts together a team to create a solution if they can't find any substitutes. Preferably one that exonerates the Empire of any wrongdoing, since Ghorman is a well-known trade planet. An ISB supervisor, Dedra Meero, who I'll get more into later, comes up with a solution, creating a false flag operation with a Ghorman resistance group in conjunction with anti-Ghorman propaganda that justifies the Empire's planetary suppression and covers up the mining operation. Throughout the series, the writers have really shown their strengths in world building on Ferrix, Aldhani, and even Chandrila for a brief period of time. But their best can be found on Ghorman with its architecture, community, silk trade, spider iconography, language, which the actors were encouraged to speak in between takes so it felt more natural, and even their own national anthem. And the resistance group, the Ghorman Front, isn't an organized militia or has any well-trained soldiers. They're just common citizens who previously endured a massacre by Tarkin and are trying to prevent another. However, they're also inexperienced, and the younger members are too eager for a fight. So as the Empire's presence on Ghorman grows, so do the chances of them completing their objective. And the fact that the Empire started building an armory that would overshadow the monument of that original massacre exacerbates the situation, causing the Ghorman Front to start stealing weapon shipments and arming themselves. After confirming there are no other sources of calcite, the Empire puts the final phase of the operation into motion. They stage a bombing at the naval depot, reporters start sprouting rhetoric about terrorists on the planet and crime rates increasing, and the Ghorman Front, with multiple unaffiliated protesters, are led into a kill box. And the scene really builds up tension as all the major characters are being dispersed throughout the crowd and lose communication with each other. Meanwhile, the Imperials look like they're preparing for a fight, with them securing civilian personnel from their homes to the command center, having a group of security droids on standby, and multiple stormtroopers blocking all points of egress. Though the Ghormans are well aware of the armada flying above them, the mining ships landing in multiple regions, and have even brought concealed weapons, their protest remains peaceful, and they start singing their anthem, trying to prove to the galaxy that they aren't what the Empire say they are. However, the Empire planned for it, so they send out a squad of young cadets with riot gear into the crowd to agitate them, and one of them gets shot by an Imperial sniper. The Imperials use this as an excuse to open fire on the crowd, and just when we think the Ghor can still get out alive, the Imperials release the security droids and proceed to kill the remaining people in the plaza and thousands more. In the aftermath, the Ghormans are labelled as terrorists, their senator is arrested without cause, and the Empire's casualties, including the young cadets, are used to sway the Senate's view to the operation's narrative. And to add insult to injury, this peaceful protest massacre happened at the same monument that was erected to remember the victims of Tarkin's massacre. Just a quick side note, the Ghorman massacre was originally part of Legends continuity back in 1990. In the early years of the Empire, Tarkin landed his starship on a group of peaceful protesters blocking the landing pad, and it inspired Mon Mothma and Bail Organa to begin working together against the Empire. And though the writers renamed the event the Tarkin Massacre, the details are still the same. They even make sure the event lines up with the Rebels cartoon, though Mon Mothma's speech is a little inconsistent.
And the monster screaming the loudest. The monster we've helped create. The monster who will come for us all soon enough. Is Emperor Palpatine. I name the Emperor himself for ordering the brutal attacks on the people of Ghorman. Their peaceful world is one of countless systems helpless against his oppressive rule. This massacre is proof that our self-appointed Emperor is little more than a lying executioner, imposing his tyranny under the pretense of security. We cannot allow this evil to stand.
If I didn't point it out, someone else would in the comments.
You came here to kill me, didn't you?
You don't make it easy.
I will now.
What game is this?
No game. Kill me, or take me in.
When it comes to the protagonist Cassian Andor, the common take is that he's the weakest part of the series. However, I don't think this is true. Every rebel in Andor represents a different aspect in the rebellion. Saw Gerrera is a mad soldier who's a veteran of the Clone Wars. Bix Caleen is a victim of the Empire trying to regain control of her life. Karis Nemik is the youthful believer, and Arvil Skeen is a selfish grifter who pretends to be devoted to the cause but only wants a payday. Though Cassian isn't the most charismatic Star Wars character, he does have an engaging arc because he represents the common man turning into a rebel. At the start of the series, Cassian is self-serving and only fights against the Empire when there's something to benefit him, whether that be money, safety, or his family. Because even though Cassian hates the Empire, he believes nothing can stop it. So instead, he puts his own survival first and wants to spend the rest of his days in comfort. But Cassian does slowly become devoted to the cause throughout Season 1. During the Aldhani Heist's preparation, Cassian learns why the other group members are fighting the Empire, but the two that have the most impact are Nemik and Skeen. Nemik is writing a manifesto detailing the Empire's mentality and why they try so hard to maintain their control, whereas Skeen is jaded and just wants money.
Apparently the only thing keeping us from liberty is a few more ideas.
A few more ideas. I mean, it's so confusing, isn't it? So much going wrong, so much to say, and all of it happening so quickly. The pace of repression outstrips our ability to understand it, and that is the real trick of the Imperial thought machine. It's easier to hide behind 40 atrocities than a single incident. But they have a fight on their hands, don't they? Our elemental rights are such a simple thing to hold, they will have to shake the galaxy awfully hard to loosen our grip.
Nemik unfortunately dies during the escape attempt, and Skeen is killed by Cassian after he reveals his plan to steal the ship full of credits.
What'd you tell me? You want to win and walk away. Well, 40 million apiece. Don't tell me you haven't thought about it. See, I can't fly the trawler, but I do have a safe place we can hole up. Between the two of us, we could be the winners here.
It's an our rebellion for you.
Oh, I'm a rebel. It's just, me against everybody else.
You see, Skeen is a mirror image of Cassian, a man out only for himself. And when Cassian kills Skeen, he's killing off that selfish part of himself. After Nemik dies, he leaves Cassian his manifesto, and it ignites Cassian's belief in the rebellion, that the Empire appears so strong because it knows how vulnerable it is, and any small act of rebellion weakens their hold on the galaxy. After Cassian pays off his debts back on Ferrix, he starts living on Niamos, a resort-style planet. Though Cassian is living the comfortable lifestyle he always wanted, he gets sent to Narkina 5 without any evidence or legal counsel just because he was walking by a bunch of hooligans and the trooper thought he was part of their group. Much like how his adoptive father Clem was hanged because the troopers thought he was part of the group who threw stones at them, when really, he was just trying to disperse them. And when he arrives, Cassian realizes that the Empire increased everyone's sentences because of the heist he pulled off. In order to get out, he has to convince Kino to help. Now, at this point, Kino is pre-Aldhani Cassian. He thinks the people in charge are too powerful, and the only sensible thing to do is keep his head down so he can leave. However, after finding out he'll just be sent to another prison after his sentence is finished, Kino helps Cassian. And when they get to the control room, it's Cassian who encourages Kino to rally all the inmates, bringing out his inner rebel, much like how Nemik brought out Cassian's.
I'd rather die trying to take them down than die giving them what they want.
And I would rather die trying to take them down than giving them what they want.
After he and the rest of the inmates escape the prison, we only see Cassian and Ruskot Melshi, a character we'll see in Rogue One, make it off-world. And Melshi says that they may be the only ones who made it out, and have to split up to ensure they tell the rest of the galaxy about how the Empire are keeping inmates as slaves with no chance of release. After Cassian finds out his mother died while he was in prison, he goes back to Ferrix for the funeral, even though all his enemies will be waiting for him. And when Cassian finds out his girlfriend Bix was taken in for an affiliation with both him and Luthen, Cassian plans to break her out in conjunction with the Ferrix uprising. These little moments build up the man Cassian is in Season 1, because he understands that the Empire won't just ignore him or any decent citizen since they can be deemed criminals without proof. But more importantly, Cassian realizes that he has to fight because doing nothing only helps the Empire grow stronger. And after successfully stealing from them, starting a prison-wide escape, and hearing both Nemik's manifesto and his mother's final message telling everyone to fight, he knows the Empire can be beaten. And instead of running with his friends, Cassian finds Luthen and asks to join him. In Season 2, Cassian is a full-fledged rebel agent, carrying that same spark that Nemik and Maarva gave him to other agents in the rebellion.
You made this decision long ago. The Empire cannot win. You'll never feel right unless you're doing what you can to stop them. You're coming home to yourself.
However, after he is reunited with Bix, Cassian becomes overprotective of her due to his past trauma of his sister going missing, and him not making it back to Ferrix in time before his mother died. And this obsession causes harm to their relationship, as Bix feels suffocated because Cassian doesn't want to stay outside for too long, believing it risks their discovery, and is willing to kill people if they can identify her. As the season continues, and they make a home for themselves on Yavin, Cassian actually wants to leave the rebellion since he knows it will eventually kill him, and he feels he's done enough. However, Bix leaves him because she knows Cassian is still needed in the fight, and she promises that when they've won, they'll meet again. And at the end of the season, we see Bix with a baby looking at the horizon, matching the shot of Cassian and Jin's death. Which really changes how Cassian is perceived in Rogue One, since he originally gives off this persona of a man with nothing to lose. But now we know Cassian had something to live for after the war was over and chose to fight up until that point, because again, the Empire wins if people do nothing. All that being said, there is an iteration that could have made him more interesting. After rewatching the first season, the scenes depicting Cassian's childhood were a little perplexing to me for all the points I stated earlier, but especially because in Rogue One, Cassian said,
I've been in this fight since I was 6 years old.
I did a bit of research, and according to Wikipedia, Cassian was 33 at the time of the film, so the Empire wouldn't have been formed till he was 14. After delving deeper, I found an article by Amy Reichow stating that Cassian was originally a separatist activist in his childhood years. Nothing like Count Dooku or General Grievous, he just threw rocks and bottles at Republic troopers. So, this line does make sense if the fight wasn't just with the Empire, but with the corruption that created it. However, the article is written like an in-universe record, and even states it may not be accurate due to Cassian being a covert agent. Plus, Disney isn't great about following its own expanded continuity, especially since this very series retcons how Cassian got K2SO. Originally, he was reprogrammed during a mission, but in the series, his parts were collected on Ghorman and later reprogrammed on Yavin. The reason I'm bringing this up is I want you to imagine how interesting it would be if Cassian was raised as separatist instead of being an orphan on some random mining planet. This 6 years old line would make sense since Cassian experienced the negative elements of the Republic that led to the creation of the Confederacy of Independent Systems. But they were still somewhat restricted in what they could do since there was still some law and order. And then we see those same elements gain more power and freedom when they transition to the Empire, especially since the Empire's key leadership were originally part of the Republic. This backstory would also make Cassian stand out more in the roster of Star Wars characters, because all his life he instinctually knew the evil under the surface.
We've waited long enough.
You realize what you set in motion?
It was time for that as well.
Palpatine won't hesitate now.
Exactly. We need it. We need the fear. We need them to overreact.
You can't be serious.
The Empire has been choking us so slowly we're starting not to notice. The time has come to force their hand.
People will suffer.
That's the plan.
Because we know the Empire will be defeated, Andor puts in the time to talk about the idea of freedom and the sacrifices made to get it. Now, Rogue One showcased the rebels sacrificing their lives for the chance at victory, but Andor was about the personal sacrifices the rebels made for the next generation's freedom. Morality, sanity, love, the possibility of a future, and Luthen Rael is the perfect avatar for this. Luthen built up a network of spies, information, and tech trading to aid small cells of rebels make strategic strikes against the Empire while masquerading as an antiquities dealer. But what makes Luthen stand out is his understanding of the Empire and what it will take to beat them, which leads to him causing tension with other members of the rebellion. Luthen knows that the Empire has been slowly corrupting the galaxy to the point that common citizens can't notice. So he stages big swings against the Empire, like the Aldhani Heist and the Ghorman Front, to not only strengthen the rebels, but also make the Empire react with aggression. And though this volatile reaction causes harm to citizens across the galaxy, it inspires those same citizens to rise up against the Empire because they now see the full scope of its evil. What also makes Luthen stand out is that he's a well-written, morally ambiguous character, because though he wants the rebellion to succeed, they openly disagree with Luthen's methods and no longer trust him, especially since he also has people assassinated when he believes they're a threat to him or his network, no matter who they are. He's willing to let an entire rebel cell fall into an Imperial trap to keep his ISB spies cover, and he consistently burns out his agents. But it is because of this extreme mentality that Luthen discovers the existence of the Death Star, and he takes his own life after he's found out by the ISB to ensure they won't get any intel out of him. To write a morally ambiguous character, you can't just have your hero point out all the evil things they've done, only for that character to counter with some flimsy, half-hearted excuse to justify them, and then have your hero just agree. The greater universe has to acknowledge that their actions are harmful, but also clarify the reasoning and showcase a positive outcome that could only have happened because of those disagreeable actions.
It's a lie. The Mon Mothma people think they know. It's a lie. It's a projection. It's a front. Smile. I've learned from Palpatine. If I show you the stone in my hand, you miss the knife at your throat.
Much like Luthen, Mon Mothma has a public persona where she tries to use her senatorial status to promote positive change in the galaxy, only for the rest of the governing body to undermine it because they're either corrupt or afraid. While also dealing with her hedonistic husband Perrin and moody teenage daughter Leda. Though Mothma can't affect much as a senator, she's using her wealth to fund the rebellion. However, it comes with the risk of exposure as the Empire is constantly monitoring both Mon and her accounts, causing her to be in the most danger than anyone in this series and always have to put on an act while she's in public. After the Aldhani heist, Mothma's accounts were frozen and missing 400,000 credits, which would make the Empire suspicious and look into her. To cover up the missing funds, Mothma has to jeopardize her relationship with her family, mainly by putting her daughter in an arranged marriage with a banker's son so she can regain control of her accounts, and accusing her husband of gambling so the ISB assume that's where the missing money went to. However, after Leeta's wedding, neither her nor Perrin really have the same level of presence they did back in Season 1, which is a real shame because it was stated by the writers that there was cut content of Perrin revealing that he knew Mon was funding the rebellion and protected her from the ISB by feigning ignorance while they interrogated him, which would have made her escape from Coruscant all the more tragic because she spends the entire show thinking her husband doesn't care about anything but himself, when really he loved her so much that he risked his life to keep her safe. We also don't get any closure on what happens to Leeta, and the wedding is the last we see of her. We don't know if Mothma ever told Leeta why she arranged the marriage, or if the marriage itself was happy. The reason I'm bringing it up is because with Cassian and Luthen literally sacrificing everything, these missing moments with Mothma's family would have really emphasized the tragedy of what she was sacrificing for the rebellion. Going back to Mothma's escape, in the aftermath of the Ghorman massacre, Mothma has had enough and wants to leave Coruscant and publicly proclaim both Palpatine's and the Empire's evil. In the lead up to the speech, Mothma discovers a listening device in her office, that her extraction team is compromised, and that her personal assistant is one of Luthen's agents, making Mon feel completely alone. But when she has the chance to speak, Mothma isn't afraid, but impassioned, as each word she says about the twisting of truth and the genocide of the Ghormans is filled with intensity, because now she can finally say what she's wanted to for years but couldn't under threat of death.
So I'm choosing for the both of us. I'm choosing the rebellion. And when it's done, when it's over, and we've won, we can do all the things we ever wanted. Everything we know we've missed. I'll find you.
Bix Caleen is Cassian's love interest and one of Luthen's tech dealers. Throughout Season 1, Bix is consistently victimized. After Cassian kills the two security corpos, a strike team kills her boyfriend Tim while she's forced to watch handcuffed to a wall. And while the ISB is trying to identify Luthen, they interrogate Bix to get information, and the torture they use isn't physical, but psychological, as she's forced to listen to the death cries of an alien species whose sound can cause incredible distress to the listener. And the trauma she suffered doesn't just get shrugged off, it actually lingers for years and causes her to get a drug habit to stop the nightmares. While Bix and Cassian are together in Season 2, Cassian is overprotective of her, and it only adds to Bix's distress because she feels suffocated, and she doesn't always know if Cassian will come back from his missions alive. But the season slowly builds her back up when she manages to fight off an Imperial soldier that tries to take advantage of her, gives the doctor who tortured her the same treatment, and destroys both him and his lab so no one can replicate his methods. After Bix is healed, though she wants to leave with Cassian and have a future with him away from the rebellion, she also wants to fight. But the only way to keep both of them fighting is to do it separately, because Bix loves him so much that she'll probably leave if he asked her, and it's thanks to Cassian's sacrifice that Bix gets a happily ever after. And on that hopeful note, let's get controversial. Just a quick content warning, I will be discussing some very intense topics around assault. If you don't feel comfortable or have any triggers with this subject, you can skip to the next chapter, or leave the video and come back when you feel ready. When Season 2 premiered, there was a lot of controversy about an Imperial officer attempting to assault Bix because she was living on the planet illegally and wanted a sexual favor for his silence. Bix then fights him off and kills him before anything can happen. Now, just to be clear, I'm not making light of the situation. It's a very uncomfortable scene, but I think the louder voices on the internet have misinterpreted the scene's purpose, because these are the main points people use against the scene. A sexual assault scene has no place in a Star Wars story. The scene is gratuitous. The scene should be implied like the other more mature moments in the franchise. The Empire wouldn't condone it. And Bix shouldn't have used the word rape, but instead some Star Wars substitute. To the first point, Andor is the show to illustrate the mature tones of the Star Wars universe. If it was one of the movies, the cartoon shows, or even Skeleton Crew, then yeah, the outrage would be justified, because those properties have children in the demographic. But Andor has been handling mature content since episode 1. The show opens up with Cassian entering a brothel to look for his sister. We watch a man die because he hit his head on the ground. We hear a couple of troopers taking a piss while Vel and Cinta are hiding. We watch a man have a heart attack, another man suffer a stroke and get euthanized, and we witness the massacre of a peaceful protest. Though, to be fair, they probably should have pushed up the age rate for that episode just to be safe. To the second point of the scene being gratuitous, Bix fighting back against the officer is the first step of her getting back her agency. Throughout this 3-episode arc, Bix has been enduring the trauma of her torture and only feels calm when she's around her friends. So Bix being able to defend herself alone displays how strong she is despite her trauma. And for the people who say the scene is disgusting, I don't think those people have actually watched it. Because though the officer does approach Bix without her consent and attacks her, everyone's clothes stay on and Bix kills him before anything happens. To the third point, the Star Wars films have been pretty good at implying violence instead of showing it, but implying what happened in this scene doesn't have the same impact. Take a look at this quick edit I made where we don't see the conflict.
You want to think this through?
Please don't. Please. I'm begging you.
But it's such a simple choice.
Lieutenant!
Come in, Unit 1. Unit 1, are you there?
Sir.
All the tension that's been building up since the cruiser flew in disappears, and the officer appears less threatening since the spectators can only assume Bix killed him instantly. As for whether the Empire would condone this kind of assault, I can think of maybe 3 Imperials that would not be okay with it. Agent Kallus, Tala Durith, and Thrawn. And 2 of them betrayed the Empire because they realized it was evil. And since Andor portrays the Imperials being rather casual in their evil, which I'll get into after this, the only thing this officer would probably be punished for is not reporting illegal immigrants in his sector. The final argument is that people don't want Bix to say the word rape and instead say a Star Wars term. But changing the word is more problematic because it downplays the crime. Whenever Star Wars uses a made-up word to substitute something in our world, it's usually a drug, food, or metal, and it's used to great effect as it adds to the world building and makes the universe feel both real and fantastical. But when it comes to common things, a swamp is called a swamp, a storm is called a storm, and the color green is still called green. If the universe were to be completely alien and not have anything resembling our terminology, the characters might as well not speak English. And the purpose of Bix screaming,
He tried to rape me,
is to get the other Imperial to not arrest her because she defended herself. But the law of a dictatorship is only there to benefit the leaders, not protect common citizens. And the only way to portray that in this scene is for Bix to be raw and direct in her dialogue. Also, one more thing, then I'll move on. I find it interesting that the internet gets set ablaze for Bix fighting off an attempted assault, but I don't recall such a reaction a year ago when Torben got mind-dominated in The Acolyte. But anyway, comment down below what you guys think. Does the scene work the way it is? Would you change it? Or just leave it out?
What do we do here?
Sir?
I open the question to the room. What do we do in this building? Why are we here? Anyone?
We're here to further security objectives by collecting intelligence, providing useful analysis, and conducting effective covert action, sir.
Very good, Dedra. That is verbatim from the ISB mission statement and wrong. Security is an illusion. You want security? Call the Navy. Launch a regiment of troopers. We are healthcare providers. We treat sickness. We identify symptoms. We locate germs, whether they arise from within or have come from the outside. The longer we wait to identify a disorder, the harder it is to treat the disease.
Though the common method with Disney Star Wars villains is either make them incredibly violent or childishly stupid, Andor takes a more competent approach. Because the average Star Wars fan knows how the Empire gained power and how they lost, Andor takes the time to explain how the Empire maintains its influence in the galaxy and how it eventually loses. The Empire shows its best and most intelligent with the Imperial Security Bureau, Major Partagaz, and even Director Krennic. They are shrewd, ruthless, and adaptable to rebel activity, so the good guys can't just hide in a trench coat to fool them, they have to actually act smart. And Partagaz understands the Empire's weaknesses, so he's willing to hear out unconventional theories and methods if they can tread water, and encourages his underlings to speak up about any issues to improve the organization. Meanwhile, the Empire as a whole maintains the image as an intimidating force when people attack it by reacting with overwhelming might, even to the point that a single TIE fighter can bring a sense of fear when it's flying over our heroes. However, Andor doesn't make the Empire impossibly intelligent, so the good guys need some deus ex machina to win. All parts of the Empire are run by people, and the series takes the time to show those people's limitations. Though the ISB has some of the most intelligent officers working there, it is built on an administration that looks over galaxy-wide data, and the members have to actually investigate the data to find any truth to it, which can be a disadvantage because the data could be incorrect to cover up a department's failure. Plus, the common administrator only cares about furthering their career by looking competent and saying what they think their bosses want to hear.
An honor, sir.
Really? It's an assignment. Calibrate your enthusiasm.
Yes, sir.
This means the average administrator won't look too deeply into the data they have access to unless properly motivated. And because everyone is climbing the promotion ladder, they often have to step over someone, which eventually causes the Empire and real-world dictatorships to trip over itself. But I'll get more into that later. The best representation of the Empire's evil and fragility is the Narkina 5 prison, since the Empire can also be viewed as a panopticon, seemingly all-seeing, punishment by association to keep the populace subjugated, causing a loss of agency, normalizing surveillance, and giving small rewards to loyal subjects to keep them in line. And because of this system of conditioned fear, the Senate steadily loses influence in the Empire because the other senators don't want to look guilty and be punished, which explains why they were so easily dismantled in A New Hope. But the Empire's panopticon causes people to join the rebellion because even though they might die, they know the Empire's power is dependent on fear, and doing nothing is just another kind of cage you're trapped in until you expire.
And if something just strolls through the checkpoint, no identification whatsoever, just wanders into points unknown.
The nights get busy. You know the traffic.
I don't know what's more disturbing, the fact that our corporate borders are unprotected or your complacence about it. Find it. Whatever it is, I want to know when it left and where it went.
You'd have to filter the entire night.
Well, if it's too much for you, let me know. I'm sure somebody wants the chair.
Syril Karn was the deputy inspector in charge of the investigation of the men Cassian killed. And despite the chief's desire to let the investigation go because the murdered corpos were well known for their unscrupulous behavior and likely deserved it, while also not wanting their deaths to affect the crime statistic they have to give to the Empire, Syril wants to investigate anyway because he feels the two murdered men deserve justice. You see, Syril isn't evil, more like lawful neutral, because he cares about upholding the law, but doesn't take the time to think about whether the law is wrong. However, after Cassian eludes capture and kills several members of Syril's team, he is reprimanded and forced to live with his anxiety-inducing mother. We've all been there, mate, trust me. While Syril is wallowing in his failure, he can't stop thinking about Cassian, since Syril views him as the origin to all of his problems. Syril later gets a job at the Bureau of Standards, continues the search for Cassian, and starts a relationship with ISB Administrator Dedra Meero.
Are you stalking me?
After finding out about Cassian's mother dying, Syril thinks he'll show up for the funeral and tries to arrest him. But after a riot breaks out and Dedra is put in danger, Syril instead gets her to safety and they start a relationship without the air quotes.
I should say thank you. You don't have to.
Over the course of Season 2, Syril gets multiple promotions at the Bureau and gets assigned to be Dedra's asset on Ghorman. And he's having the time of his life because he believes he's finally doing good for the Empire. However, Syril has been led to believe that his mission is to locate outside agitators who want to cause conflict on the planet, not knowing the whole thing is a false flag operation to mine it. And as Syril spends more time on Ghorman, he starts to realize that something's not adding up. In the early days of Cyril's cover, he has multiple transmissions with his mother where she discusses her distaste of Ghorman, as she is a recipient of the Empire's propaganda, but he just brushes it off. Then news reporters are saying that the Ghormans are dangerous and causing violence, but Syril knows that the Ghor are peacefully protesting and just want their basic rights. So he starts to realize Dedra isn't giving him the full truth. On the day of the massacre, Syril finds out about the mining ships landing across Ghorman, and when he enters the Imperial base, there's more evidence that something is about to happen. The increased number of troopers securing the building, and there being a small squad of security droids on standby. By this point, Syril has had enough and confronts Dedra.
How long? We can discuss this later.
It's too late already.
Syril, please.
You're gonna tell me what this has really been about?
You're hurting me.
And you are going to tell me what the mining ships are doing here.
They're not.
There is an armada up there. They're already unloading in Gelnobi and Liqua. You couldn't even wait.
No.
Don't. You tell me it's a rumor, and I will throw you out that window.
This scene is so impactful because, for the most part, Syril has been submissive when it comes to Dedra, his mother, and people of authority. But now that his morality is being challenged, he isn't afraid of anything. Dedra tells him the truth, and Syril is dumbstruck, because now he realizes that the system he believed in and fought for was a lie, which makes him a great foil for Cassian, because Syril starts off with a strong devotion to the Empire, whereas Cassian wasn't devoted to anything. But as the series progresses, Cassian gains faith in the rebellion, and Syril loses his faith in the Empire. And speaking of Cassian, while the massacre is happening, Syril is in the crowd in complete shock over what he helped create, his worldview crumbling as Ghorman burns, until he spots Cassian and loses it. And the fight is just brutal. No mock kung fu choreography, just two men trying to kill each other while a war is happening outside. And when Syril has the upper hand on the man who ruined his career and set him on this path, all Cassian can say is,
"Who are you?"
Oh my god, that is brilliant. Cassian wouldn't know Syril because he was just a random corpo. Plus, it's been years since their last encounter, and a lot's happened to Cassian to make him forget this one guy he pointed a gun at. The day Syril got fired was the most important day of his life, but for Cassian, it was Tuesday. Realizing that killing him would be meaningless, Syril lowers his blaster and gets shot in the head by the leader of the Ghorman Front. A leader who consistently wanted to keep his resistance peaceful and had now gotten blood on his hands because of Cyril's actions. Actions that prevented Syril from having a future.
We're going home, Syril. We're going home as heroes. This began long before we got here. They've been planning it for years. They're doing this no matter what. We wanted to be together. You didn't seem to mind the promotions.
Dedra Meero isn't your typical Star Wars villain. She represents the banality of evil, a concept by German-American philosopher and historian Hannah Arendt. that describes how ordinary individuals can facilitate evil acts without being motivated by malice or hatred, but instead uncritical obedience, conformity, or a lack of moral reflection. Though Dedra's goals are to uncover Luthen's identity and hunt Cassian, she's not doing it simply because she's evil or a devoted servant. Dedra's an opportunist, an employee trying to climb the ISB ladder like the rest of her colleagues. She starts the hunt to gain more respect with Partagaz and later uncovers Luthen's network when she notices a trend of stolen tech being used by rebel cells. Over time, she identifies everything going through one man and sees Luthen as a white whale that she needs to gain further status in the Empire. So she'll torture whoever she wants and come up with any heinous scheme to find out his identity. However, after she fails on Ferrix, Dedra gets recruited by Krennic to oversee the Ghorman operation, and if she wants to advance her career, Dedra has to comply. She doesn't care about the planet or its citizens, just her career and Syril. However, when he dies, Dedra is grief-stricken and her career is all she has left. Over the next year, Dedra's back on the hunt for Luthen, and the information she uses to find him inadvertently revealed the Death Star's existence. Data was sent to Dedra by accident, which gave her a lead on Luthen's identity, but because Luthen's ISB spy had access to her system, the rebellion found out about the Empire building a superweapon, and though Dedra does identify Luthen, she approaches him alone without ISB approval due to her arrogance, and Luthen doesn't let himself get captured alive. Due to her spectacular failure, Dedra's punishment is that she is sent to the same labor prison Cassian was in, forced to serve the Empire for the rest of her days.
There are whole armies, battalions that have no idea that they've already enlisted in the cause. Remember that the frontier of the rebellion is everywhere, and even the smallest act of insurrection pushes our lines forward. And then remember this. The Imperial need for control is so desperate because it is so unnatural. Tyranny requires constant effort. It breaks. It leaks. Authority is brittle. Oppression is the mask of fear.
While the series aired, there has been this online debate about whether Andor is a Star Wars show due to its mature content and not having any Jedi or Sith present. But how could it not be? The series is tied to important events in both the original and prequel trilogy, and its theme is about understanding evil and how good inevitably triumphs over it. It's just from a well-informed perspective that still respects what Star Wars is. The beginning might be a little slow, and the series might not be what you expect out of a Star Wars property, but Andor is still worth your time because it makes you sit up and pay attention.